Welcome to Make It Plain from Make Plain Jesus Ministries, where we take biblical truths in everyday situations and break them down to be as plain as possible. So, stay tuned and enjoy the broadcast.
Welcome to Make It Plain, our podcast. And so we are going to just have a great topic to discuss today. And shortly, I will be able to introduce a special guest, which I'm excited to share with you. But first, I just want to introduce myself as always. I'm James Bryan. I happen to be the pastor of Make Plain Jesus Ministries. But I just want to focus on this podcast and this episode where we're focusing on giving you encouraging words and clear understanding to different things that may impact your life. And they're coming from the standpoint of truths that is true. Jesus' practical examples he's given us, the word that he's given us that really apply to the way that you live on a regular basis. And so during this time, and as my guest and I will have a conversation going back and forth, I know that there will be wonderful truths that you can deal with because we're getting a lot, like many other organizations, especially churches, folks that are concerned about what does this mean? What is it? What's going to happen next? Some will ask, is this based on prophecy? Some will say, well, what do I do from day to day and how do I manage my time? So the questions range from a lot of different venues. But we just want to talk about, how to just on a practical level and how to handle one day at a time during all of these particular changes that we're experiencing. I would just give you this one quick nugget before I introduce my guest, and that is you probably shouldn't stand in front of the television all day long and just continually watch it. That will not be beneficial to you. So, with that being said, the topic that my guest, Mike Mills, will and I will talk about is how to live without worry during these uncertain times. And so this is important for us to think about. And let me just give you a quick background on Mike. And it's funny how, God brings folks together from various parts of the globe. And it just so happened, and I do that with air quotes, if you will. It just so happens that Mike happened to reach out to this church called Make Plain Jesus Ministries. Hadn't heard from us or anything heard of us before, and we just started a conversation. And during those few conversations that we've had since, one thing that kind of stuck with me was I'm going to say Mike's energy, but really it's Mike's joy for what the Lord's doing in his life, in his community, what God is just going to do even going forward, which translates to a lot of hope. And that kind of resonated with me. And so when I was thinking about the episodes and launching this particular podcast, Mike kept coming up in my mind. So I just wanted to make sure that I was able to reach out to Mike. And so, Mike, I just want to say welcome, Mike Mills. Welcome to the Make It Plain podcast today.
Thank you, Pastor James. Appreciate
Not
that.
not a problem at all. I'm excited about the conversation that we're about to have. And before we even get started, I am going to give you an opportunity just to tell the world anything you want to know about them to know about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So then I guess I call myself a journeyman. I was a senior pastor for 15 years down in Delaware. And then my family, we moved to upstate New York, the frozen chosen. We
Wow.
are we are up here. We just got about a foot of snow the other day. Thankfully,
Oh
it's starting
my.
to move away. But we now do ministry in upstate New York. I am a representative for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, where I engage in sports ministry on the University of Albany campus and a few other local high schools with different sports ministries now. So that's my primary focus of ministry right now.
Excellent, excellent. So, Frozen Chosen, man, you must have thought, God, are you really calling me up to this kind of climate, huh?
I said he called us up in September 3 years ago. If he'd have called us in the middle of winter, I'd have probably had to pull a Jonah and took off running in the opposite direction. But I think God knew what he was doing because it's beautiful here all the other 3 seasons. Yeah.
Yeah. And so are you, just a quick understanding, are you originally from the Delaware area, or are you from some warmer area, or what?
No, my entire family, we're from Delaware. We were born and raised down at the beaches, southern Delaware. So, yeah, it's quite a different landscape for us being up here. We're just south of the Adirondacks, and beautiful area, but a lot different demographic for us.
Right. I can imagine. I can imagine. So one of the things that, as we think about that, and as you begin to give your insights here on some of the areas that I'll ask you about, it is also going to be interesting to see if there is any kind of different perspective, not just only on your travels from Delaware and New York and all, but also in your community up in New York. Is there anything different from down here? And I won't steal any of your thunder, but as I ask, feel free to add any flavor, just so that our listeners will be able to understand the
Sure,
challenges that may or may not be different in the area where you are.
sure,
So,
absolutely.
sure. And with that said, so tell me, from your perspective, how is your community, the athletes that you deal with, your church, everything else, coping with the impacts of the coronavirus?
Yeah, it's a great question. I know here, if you've been watching any of the news or any of the updates, New York is actually densely decorated, if you want to use the word decorated, with the coronavirus. There's been a lot of confirmed cases in the Westchester area, just north of New York City, and it's actually spread up to us in the Albany area. So it's really hitting close to home up here. As per se, down in Delaware, we have family and other pastors that we're friends with there, and it's almost like it's on the outskirts there, and not so
Hmm.
much on the front line. So here it's hitting close to home. We've got, my daughter's high school, a couple of her teachers have the virus, a couple of ministries. We were out yesterday handing meals out, and there's families that they're quarantined because of this. So yeah, so I think that's the main logistical difference is here it's here
Right.
it's boots on the ground in upstate New York. So I think that's the first logistical difference. As far as everybody's demeanor, from what I've seen is, I think it's a global, global issue, and talk about it more in a minute. But there is that mass hysteria, that people are panicking. We're running out of toilet paper just like every every other Walmart. People are crazy when you walk into the store. So I think that's a universal concept. And um, but again, we could talk more about that in a minute as to, where our, where we're looking to for our help. I think that really
Hmm.
resonates with a lot of the panic.
Right. Right. And that's good because that you're explaining it that way. So, and you are, and every time I look at the news online, they're always talking about New York as being, I think the governor might have said, almost like the epicenter of everything in the U.S. right now. And so,
Right.
you know, yeah, and so you'll have some great insights as how you individually, and then how the community is really dealing with these things and where the hope should really be. So let me ask you
Sure.
that. So there are a number of folks that I've talked to in this area recently, and I know one person was telling me that says, "Look, I'm not an extrovert at all, but I got to get out and talk to somebody. I hope this thing ends soon because it's driving me up the wall." And so that whole concept for people trying to deal with, I'm used to going all the time, and all of a sudden everything comes to a halt, and I'm sitting in my house or confined to areas nearby. How do you structure your day, and how do you get through all of this? Because, like I said, in my experiences of speaking with you, you're always upbeat no matter what's going on, but you find a way to encourage yourself. So what would you give as advice to other people who find themselves like, wow, I'm still in this house again?
Sure. And again, that's another great question. I know for me, I root back to, I'm a practical pastor, and I think that, I think that's one of the great things about your guys' ministry as well is, you know, making Jesus available in the
Hmm.
spiritual sense, but also he gives us practical applications. And
Yeah.
I think as human beings, we're all creatures of habit. We're all
Hmm.
creatures of routine. We just are. That's, whether it be
Right,
good
right,
habits, bad habits, that's just what we are. We don't like change. So when things like this happen, I don't care if we've, been a believer for 50 years or 5 minutes or not a believer, it
right,
disrupts our routine, our groove, it's the mojo that we're in.
right.
And so for me, I know for me and my family, we just had to readjust and restructure our daily habits. I think my wife and I joke all the time that this is really tough for two type A personalities to be in here, because we are not down people. We're not just gonna curl up and watch Netflix for the
Right,
next
right.
month or whatever. We're strategic. We're planning. So we're trying to go full court press out of this. But amidst everything going on, I think the first thing that becomes very important is that we recognize that God is still in control. And I think that's
Right.
what keeps our sanity as believers.
Yes.
And I know for me in particular, I was right when this pandemic first started, when the gyms were still open and everything. I was in my gym, my local gym, and they have a whole board of televisions up there, and there's like 8 or 10 of them. And the NBA had just canceled. That was on one TV. The outbreak was on another. And I was looking at this, and I said, if I didn't have my hope in Jesus Christ, this
Right,
would be just catastrophic that I'm looking
right,
at here.
right.
But again, I don't want to get the end of my story at the beginning here, but I started trying to really dig down on where my hope was. And I think the first thing is to recognize that Jesus spoke this. He told us. I
Hmm.
always go back to Luke chapter 21. He
Hmm.
says there's a day coming,
Right.
before Christ comes back, there's an actual day coming when nation will rise against nation. We see that.
Hmm.
There will be great earthquakes,
Right,
famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events, and
right,
great signs from heaven. And it says that these will seize us. And so
yeah,
Jesus said this, he foretold this. So that gives me reassurance, knowing that if he foretold this, that he's surely in control of this.
right,
You know,
right,
and I think for me that's the greatest the greatest thing that I hold on to, especially scripturally. Of Jesus said, "In this world you will have trouble." Not there's a
right,
chance there could be troubles, or 30% of you are going to face troubles. No, he
right.
gave us the the warm
That-
word of encouragement. Every one of us, Christian, non-believer
Right.
alike, will face trouble.
Well, let me interrupt you
But
real quick. Let me interrupt you real quick.
yeah,
That's a really key point, because oftentimes I find people, especially if they say, "Well, I've been in church all my life, but wait a minute, something's happening in my life. I got some, I'm gonna say, headwinds that are coming," and it's almost like they're shocked that something impacts their life. And I said, and you're right, and I'll refer to the same passages that you just quoted, and I'll even say this: the key thing is, if you need to know from a practical perspective, it's really, well, what are you going to do in that situation? You're not designed
right,
to curl up and just fall away, but he's giving you
exactly,
tools and he's giving you encouragement, right? So I agree
right,
wholeheartedly with what you said.
yeah, that's great. I always root back to the mindset even before this situation, because life is life. This just happens to be something on a global scale. We all face sicknesses and prognosis, loss of job, you know,
Hmm.
and I think in this Christian journey, it's really important that it's not what happens to us, it's what happens through us.
That's
We
right.
how do we allow it to impact our lives? Are we growing from it? Does our faith, is
Hmm.
our, I don't know about anybody else, but everybody loves a great testimony, but
Right.
nobody wants to be the one to go through the test to have to share that testimony.
Right.
We just want to come out the other side. Um, but I, I love, I guess to answer the first part of your question is, where do I find that hope? Zeroing in personally. For
Hmm.
me, I live, and I probably read this passage more in the last month than I have in the last year. where the Apostle Paul, we all know Philippians 4:13. It's like tattooed everywhere. It's almost as popular as John 3:16.
Right.
But many times that scripture is misrepresented because we don't read what the verses say prior to that. It's not, it's not Christianity is a good luck charm and I can go out and do anything I want. That's not that verse. Paul actually tells us, if you back up 2 verses, he's sitting in a prison cell writing this, and verse 11 says, I'm not saying this because I'm in need. He said, I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. Well, zero that into our lives right now. How in the world can we be content with everything going on in our in this world, Russ? How can we be content? And he answers that question. He said, I know what it is to be in need. I know what it is to have plenty. I know what it is, to, in every situation, well-fed or hungry. And then the answer to that question, which applies to us right now, is I can do all of this through him who gives me strength. His focus is on Christ, not on his circumstances. And I think for me, that's where the hope comes from is, my hope isn't in our government, but I stand behind that. I think people get on one end of the spectrum or the other. It's either all God or all government. We know God's appointed our government. So it's not them against us. But my hope isn't in them. My hope isn't in a stimulus. My hope isn't in the virus going away. My hope is in Christ.
Right.
And he'll see me through every situation.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was well put. So let me ask you this then, just to piggyback on it. So let's imagine to a degree, and is that you literally had a platform that everyone around the globe, but especially within this country, would stop at this moment and hear the words that you have to say, and you could tell them anything in the midst of everything that's going on. If you had like a 5-minute window, what would you tell them? What would you say to folks? Even if Congress could stop everything right now and listen to you, if the mother and father in any town USA or Main Street could stop right now and hear you in the midst of everything else, what would you tell them?
Yeah, that's good. I would literally take that opportunity to just let people know that God wants a relationship with them. He cares about you. It doesn't matter where you are in your journey. I think modern culture, and my term is religiosity, which is not in a dictionary, but I think that's really driven a lot of people away from the love of Christ. It's, I've done too many things wrong, or when I fix myself up. And I would just tell people right where you are right now, God just wants a relationship with you. He wants to get to know you. It doesn't matter how far you've been or how far you are right now. You're never too far to come back to God's purpose and plan for your life. They never change. And I think it's moments like these, people think I sometimes look at me with a scour face when I say this, but I enjoy speaking at funerals more than I do at weddings. Because at funerals, you've got everybody's attention for a brief moment about mortality. And they're going to listen and lean in a little more to what you have to say. And, as opposed to a wedding where it's, everybody's caught up in the moment. And I think that really relates to moments like we're in right now, where chaos and turmoil and uncertainty are abound. People, I really believe, are looking for answers now more than ever. And I again, it goes back to me for God working all things together for good. I keep up to date here on social media. Everybody's putting their sermons online. I think there's been more outreach and evangelism in these last 2 months than there's been in the last 20 years. Because of this. And no, it's not a good thing that people are losing their lives in the coronavirus. I get that. But I think, again, God's working this together for the good, and something good is coming out of this. People are hearing the gospel, via technology.
Right. I agree from that standpoint, and this whole basis of really Jesus is the source, and just focusing on him, and I like how you dissected even before about yes, the government's appointed and all, but your real hope is in Jesus, and it's not one or the other. I
Right.
think that was very well said, and I think that the details that you've given just about how you focus and how really Jesus foretold all of this. I think it's a great boost, and I would encourage folks who may not have followed the Lord that much or just stayed away because of the negative images they've seen to try to lean in
Mhm.
a little bit more and find out whether the things that you, Mike, have talked about really do apply. And
Yeah.
and so and I would even encourage people to try to look at it from the perspective where Mike just explained, because that would also I would say add more quality to your life right now, as opposed to waiting for the next shoe to drop or the next thing to go wrong. And that way, your life can be even more fulfilling in the midst of all of these storms and things that are happening. Would you agree?
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're exact. You hit the nail right on the head. As you were talking, I'm literally looking. My devotion today with my family was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all
Mm-hmm.
your heart and don't lean on your own understanding. I
Right.
kept thinking when you're saying that is, you turn the news on and anywhere, open your newspaper, talk to other people.
Right.
We lean on our own understanding too much. And,
Yeah.
we think we have it figured out. And I think that's yes, Solomon talked about wisdom and, Solomon was blessed with wisdom. But
Mm-hmm.
when that supersedes, our trust in the Lord, man, it's a dangerous place to be. Fear and
Right.
everything comes in.
Right. Exactly.
It
Well
definitely is.
spoken. And so, with that being said, for any last things you want to say as we're coming to the end, close to the end of our time, that you want to get out to anyone else that may hear this podcast anytime in the future?
Yeah, I guess the last thing I would, just want to say is, one of my greatest things. I use this all the time in the sports world, but it applies to life. It's seize the moment. Life
Hmm.
is the most precious gift that we've been given.
Right.
Tomorrow's not guaranteed. All you have is today, and Scripture tells us, choose for this day who you will serve.
Hmm.
And I guess the moral of that is, we as humans, we work our entire lifetime to enjoy maybe a 15 or 20-year earthly retirement, but we
Hmm.
spend very little time planning for our eternal retirement. And I just want to encourage everybody today, what is it today? Where are you at? Do you know where your eternal retirement will be spent? And I think this Romans 10:9 summarizes that. That if we seek Christ and we go after him and ask him into our lives, into our heart, it doesn't matter what our past looked like. We can be in a right relationship and know where our eternal destination resides. So I would just say seize the moment. Seize the moment.
Good. Well spoken. And so, for the organization, you said Fellowship for Christian Athletes, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, is there anything about the organization, a quick plug you want to give about that organization before we get ready to end our podcast?
Sure, yeah. FCA is, a national organization where we really pioneer bringing the gospel into the sports world. We believe that sports is the vehicle that we use to bring Jesus into many, many different lives. Sports is that great thing that it crosses cultural barriers, racial barriers, gender barriers, and it's just a great platform for us to just carry the word of Jesus. We say, I consider myself a missionary. It's what we
Mhm.
are. We may not be in Uganda or foreign countries, but we're in our own mission field in our own backyards, winning
Right.
people to Jesus. I know myself here locally, Albany, New York. If you look it up, Charisma Magazine, Albany, New York is the number one least Bible-minded city in the United States of America.
Wow,
So
I didn't
God
know that.
calls me here to get into this. So be praying for us, and but that also means that the field is ripe for the harvest.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah,
Well, well, look, Mike, I just want to say thanks for taking the time to be a part of this podcast. I'm saying we because I'm already anticipating those that will hear this will definitely be being filled from everything that you said, and it was an enjoyable time with you today. I want to also just invite those who are listening to this podcast to continue to follow up, and you can find the podcast as we're releasing at least once a week, if not more, going forward. And you'll find them on our website at www.makeplainjesus.org, or you can go to iHeartRadio and look for Make Plain Jesus or Make It Plain, and you'll find us there. And so the last, you can also go to Podbean and .com, and you'll find us there. So there are many ways in which you can actually find us. If you're in the Pasadena, Maryland area, Glen Burnie area, feel free to have a service with us on a Sunday once everything comes to the point that we can gather again. But until then, follow us on Facebook, and we're there also. We hope this has been a really good blessing for you. In fact, I know it was. So you have a good day. Think about everything that Mike shared, and then you'll have a wonderful day today. Have a good one.